This meeting is being held in compliance with the Brown Act. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. If a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. For all members participating remotely, please ensure your microphone is muted when not in use. Please state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. Any voting member or member of the public calling into this meeting by telephone can press *6 to mute and unmute. All telephone participants should identify themselves prior to speaking. SCAG encourages all members of the public to participate in its meetings. We are committed to holding meetings accessible to people with disabilities. For members of the public requiring ADA accommodation, please call 213-236-1895. SCAG offers free interpretation services for members of the public needing information in another language. Please call 213-236-1895. The meeting will now begin.
Is to Thursday, June 4th, 2026. Welcome to the CEHD meeting. We're now called to order. As this is my first meeting, I expect heckling and a hard time by all. As a reminder, if a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. And as one of my first duties, I get to call someone for the pledge, and I would like the Honorable David Shapiro, past chair of CHD online, to please lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Everyone, please rise. Hands over your heart. State the flag. Stand before the flag and join together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Can I confirm quorum? Thank you very much. We're now at a public comment period, and we're going to open the general public comment period of the meeting. This is the time for members of the public to offer comments for matters that are within SCAG's jurisdiction but are not listed on the agenda. And we're anticipating a lot of public speakers for items today, so we have a few more bullet points I just want to read as a reminder. Members of the public have several options for giving comment on items at this committee. Members of the public can submit written comments and provide verbal comments either in person or virtually. Written comments can be emailed to epubliccomment@scag.ca.gov. Written comments received by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026 have been transmitted to members of this committee and posted on SCAG's website prior to the meeting. If participating in person, you are invited but not required to fill out and present a public comment card to the clerk of the board or other SCAG staff prior to speaking. It is helpful to indicate whether you wish to speak during public comment period, matters not on the agenda, or on an item listed on the agenda. If participating in real time via Zoom or phone, please wait for the presiding officer to call the item for which you wish to speak and then use the raise hand function on your computer or *9 by phone and wait for SCAG staff to announce your name and phone number. If you are in agreement with a sentiment previously expressed by another commenter, we encourage you to simply state that you are in agreement to save our committee time for discussion. Unlike my city council meetings, we can't go to midnight here. We have a hard stop, and so brevity and pithiness is appreciated. We will now begin with in-person commenters and then move to those online once in-person public comments have finished. Staff, have we received any written public comments after the deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026?
Mr. Chair, we have received several written public comments for items on our agenda today. Those written comments have been transmitted to our committee members and posted online.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chair, I do not see any members wishing to participate in person or online.
Okay, I will now close the public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda. Do we need to review and prioritize any agenda items? No? We're moving on now to the consent calendar. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I do not see any members wishing to participate.
Okay. In order to save time, if anyone wants to pull anything from the consent calendar, I ask that we have staff present before moving to the roll call vote for the consent calendar. Anything to pull? No? Then I will.
Finley, move approval. I knew what you were going to say, Rocky.
Thank you. I have I believe, first by Margaret and Joe Baca for a second. And can we do the roll call?
Yes. This is for the consent calendar. Cindy Allen,
Aye.
Valerie Masqua, Joe Baca,
Aye.
Debbie Baker,
Aye.
Chelsea Byers, Don Caskey, Tanya Doby, Deborah Dorsey Parada,
Here. Yes.
Keith Ide,
Yes.
Shawn Elias,
Aye.
Bob Engler, Rose Espinosa, Wayman Furman, Margaret Finley,
Yes.
Claudia Fermetta, Martin Fuentes,
Yes.
John Gabbard,
Aye.
Gary Gardner, Mike Goodsell,
Yes.
John Grass, Mark Henderson,
Yes.
Peggy Wong, Cecilia Hupp,
Yes.
William Hussey,
Yes.
Brenda Johnson, Matt Levere, Giuliano,
Yes.
Jim Light,
Yes.
Annie Marshall, Betty Martinez Franco,
Yes.
Andrew Maciel,
Yes.
Joseph Morabito,
Yes.
thank you, Cynthia Moran,
Yes.
Joe Murphy, Rocky Rhodes,
Yes.
Sheila Rossi,
Yes.
Sonny Santinez,
Yes.
David Shapiro,
Yes.
Becky Shevlin,
Yes.
Mary Solorio, Valerie Vanderveer,
Yes.
Mark Warrenick,
Aye.
Equinetta Warren, Jeff Wood,
Yes.
Judy Woolsey,
Yes.
Tony Wu,
Yes.
Frank Yokoyama, and Frank Seranian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair, I believe I missed my name. Chelsea Byers present. Apologies.
Yes,
Thank you.
I did say your name. Thank you. Chair, the consent calendar passes with 31 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstention.
Thank you. We're moving on to item number 4 on our agenda, action item. This is the 7th Regional Housing Needs Assessment Process and Subcommittee. This is an action item. As many of you have been eagerly anticipating, SCAG will be starting the 7th RHNA cycle this year. This is an intense process that requires robust conversations and discussion and will ultimately culminate in a RHNA allocation for every jurisdiction in the SCAG region. As part of the process, SCAG forms a RHNA subcommittee that helps develop the RHNA methodology and eventually will serve as an appeals board. A few of you in this room have had the opportunity to serve on this subcommittee in the last cycle, and I'm sure you can share your experiences. For this cycle, SCAG is proposing a more inclusive approach that will extend or expand the number of members. The subcommittee will still report to this committee for the methodology. The action is to recommend to Regional Council the approach, not the roster of members. There is still an open call for potential interest in serving, which is open until tomorrow. So please send your interest into the SCAG clerk, Maggie Aguilar, by the end of the day tomorrow, June 5th. I now call on Mayanne Johnson, SCAG's Housing Department Manager, to provide us with a presentation on this item.
Great. Thank you, Chair Rhodes, and good morning, members of the CEHD Committee. For those unfamiliar, I run the RHNA hotline, but now I have a whole team to also run the RHNA hotline. So any burning RHNA questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at any time. So I'm here today to talk about the 7th RHNA cycle, and an action before you today is to recommend that the Regional Council authorize the formation of the 7th RHNA subcommittee to support the development of the RHNA methodology and allocation plan, provide recommendations to this committee and the Regional Council, and serve as the final hearing body for RHNA appeals with the membership composition, quorum, and voting procedures as described in the staff report. So as Chair Rhodes mentioned earlier, it's not for the actual roster and each member, but rather the approach that we're proposing today. So for those new to the RHNA process, I do see a lot of familiar faces that weren't here for the 6th cycle, so I'll just give a brief overview of RHNA. I'm sure you've already heard of it, and I'm sure you already have an opinion on it. I'm not here to change your opinion today, but just giving you an overview of it because you're going to get ready for the 7th cycle. So for RHNA, it's a state-mandated planning process to determine both existing and projected housing need. It occurs in 8-year planning cycles and allocates housing need across different income categories, and this is for every jurisdiction, that's city and unincorporated county, throughout the state of California. It's not a building quota, but it does require jurisdictions to plan for sites and zoning to accommodate your RHNA allocation. So your RHNA allocation is the number of units you need to plan for in your housing element in your general plan. So these are the 5 main objectives for RHNA. These are outlined in state law, and everything we do with RHNA does have to further these 5 objectives. So that goes from the RHND that we get from HCD all the way until the final allocation. So that does include the methodology as well. So the 5 objectives are to increase housing supply and mix of housing types in an equitable manner, promoting infill and infill development and socioeconomic equity, preserving open space and agricultural resources, and encouraging efficient development patterns. There's also promoting an improved intra-regional relationship between jobs and housing. And then there's also allocating a lower proportion of housing need and income categories where they already exist. So we also don't want to give jurisdictions more of exactly the same, especially when they're in lower income categories. And then the 5th one is to affirmatively furthering fair housing. That is related to number 4, but it also looks at not just income, but also other factors to increase access to fair housing across populations. So a brief overview of the responsibilities for the RHNA process. So it does start with the California Department of Housing and Community Development. They consult with every council of governments, including SCAG, during their before their planning cycle starts to determine the regional housing determination. So that's that big number that SCAG is assigned at the beginning of the process. So they do this in consultation with SCAG and the Department of Finance, and then they assign each COG that giant number. So it's up to each COG to develop a methodology, kind of like a cookie cutter, and apply that methodology so that every jurisdiction gets a draft RHNA allocation. We'll have an appeals process, and I'm sure you're ready to appeal your RHNA number already, but we'll have a separate process for that, don't worry. But after that, we'll assign a final RHNA allocation, and then your local jurisdiction is required to take that allocation and update your housing element. And then it comes back full circle because HCD reviews your housing element and approves it according to state housing law. So the regional determination, that big regional number I was referring to. So this is just a quick comparison of the different cycles that we've had. You can see there's a lot of variation. Each cycle has had different requirements on what HCD is required to consider for that existing and projected need for the region. And what they put into it is also as relevant as how they apply it. So you can see some variation, about 700,000 for the fourth cycle. The fifth cycle did have a recession involved in there, and HCD curiously gave us a credit, which I am sure we will never see again as long as RHNA exists. That was about 412,000. But for the sixth cycle, there was a sticker shock. That's 3 times as high as the previous cycle, that 1.3 million number for units across the region. And so this upcoming seventh cycle, we're taking over and unders, but it is a question mark for now. But we do have additional factors we have to that HCD has to consider for this coming cycle. So I can probably tell you now it's not going to go down. So a brief overview of the methodology that we assigned for the last cycle. So this is applied to that RHND to get individual jurisdiction allocation. So we took a formulaic approach for our 197 jurisdictions. So we looked at factors such as share of household growth. This was in connection with the growth forecast from Connect SoCal. We also looked at job access. So this was defined for the sixth cycle as jobs within a 30-minute drive commute. Transit access, this was defined at the time as high quality transit areas. And then we also looked at household income distribution and other indicators of resources, such as environmental factors, education, and economy in order to further AFFH. So every cycle and every COG can determine a different methodology. So just because we did it for the sixth cycle doesn't mean necessarily that we have to do it for the seventh cycle. But this is just to give you an overview of the factors we considered to get to your jurisdiction's RHNA allocation. And so this is just a visualization of the job accessibility factors. So based on percentage of jobs accessible within a 30-minute drive commute, you can see a higher concentration of that in the more urban and coastal areas. And so as I mentioned earlier, that our methodology for the seventh cycle could use a different factor, but we'll be looking at how to connect it to our Connect SoCal plan. So this is just a quick Venn diagram of the overlap between just RHNA, because we don't want to do things in a vacuum, but we also want to coordinate and have the Connect SoCal plan inform a lot of what we do for RHNA. So you can see it's a little dark here, but we just look at things such as the intra-regional relationship between jobs and housing, infill development, and other factors to ensure that there is still a connection between both of those regional plans. So for the RHNA timeline for the seventh cycle, so statutorily, HCD is required to start consulting with SCAG by August of this year. They'll also be consulting with the Department of Finance. It is possible they'll reach out earlier. We're starting our connections now with them, but HCD does tend to get on the later side of the process. They are required to give that RHND by October this year. So we should have our regional number by then. And again, we'll try to get a number earlier than that. Once we have that, based on this timeline, we anticipate developing the draft methodology. So that will include a lot of public hearings, opportunities for public comment, going back to the RHNA subcommittee, this committee, and the regional council. And then we'll develop a draft methodology to send to HCD. So we anticipate that done by October 2027. And so HCD does comment on our methodology, but recent legislation has required that HCD not only comments on it, but if they want us to change our methodology, we are required to change our methodology and receive their approval before we can adopt the final methodology. So this timeline also then considers if they have comments and for us to have time to be able to change that before we adopt our final RHNA. So after we adopt the final RHNA, we'll be able to have a draft RHNA allocation, and then we can start our appeals period. For jurisdictions that want to get a head start, we definitely recommend not waiting until the final RHNA adoption to start your housing elements. So once you have a draft allocation, you can have a pretty good sense of what your RHNA is going to be. We anticipate after the appeals period adopting the final plan in October of 2028. And then housing elements are due for most jurisdictions in the SCAG region in October 2029. But recent legislation has extended this to 6 months further out for jurisdictions in LA County and Imperial County. So those housing elements would be due in April 2030. So the RHNA subcommittee, its purpose is to develop a RHNA methodology and then make recommendations to the CEHD and regional council for the draft RHNA allocation and also eventually the draft RHNA methodology, and also when receiving comments from HCD towards the final methodology. It also will serve as the final hearing body to determine RHNA appeals. So our recommended approach for the 7th cycle is to allow for up to 17 members total to increase representation based on population. So you can see on this chart, we recommend up to 4 members for LA County, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties, up to 3 members each, and then 2 members for Ventura and Imperial counties. So this would be up to 17 members rather than from the prior cycles where we had 1 primary and 1 alternate member from each county. So this does increase representation across the SCAG region. So our recommendation for the subcommittee is to authorize a formation of the 7th cycle RHNA subcommittee, and then also serve as the final hearing body for RHNA appeals. In addition, we recommend that the RC authorize the membership composition and members to be limited to CEHD members who also serve on the regional council and also be appointed by the SCAG president. If there is insufficient geographic representation, the SCAG president may appoint other regional council members to serve. And so the composition is, the membership itself will be decided by the SCAG president at a later time. And so we're recommending today just to recommend the approach to the regional council. And so with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I do not see any members of the public wishing to participate.
Right. I'll now entertain comments from members of the CEHD. We'll start in the room first, and we'll just go down the line. Honorable Margaret Finley.
Thank you very much. I sat on the committee before and I saw the angst and indigestion that so many people got. Pretty controversial, isn't it, Mayan? Everybody
That's
hates
a nice
it.
way to put it.
It's a 4-letter word.
That's true.
RHNA
Okay,
is a 4-letter word.
so my question is, why can't this go down? We have fewer people moving into California. We've kind of flatlined with population. Definitely the economy is kind of a little sketchy right now. Why couldn't it go down?
So I do have slides on how the RHND was determined in prior cycles. And it's not just the factors that go in, but my conclusion is how they apply these factors is what's causing the numbers, at least for the 6th cycle, how they became so much different from the 5th cycle. I don't have it in front of you on the slides today, but there are other factors such as homelessness, for instance, that HCD is now required to consider. And so I'm not going to say I'm going to eat my shoes, but I would not be surprised. I would be actually very surprised if for some reason our numbers went down. But at the first RHNA subcommittee, I can definitely address that question about if we don't have the RHND, then I can go over prior RHNDs, so at least we're better prepared to review it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Tanya Doby, please.
Thank you. And I'm here. I was late, but I'm here. Okay. So my question is the appeals process. If I understand correctly, I think last time there were like 50 million and maybe one of them, I'm exaggerating, obviously, one of them was approved. How is an appeal approved? Because if my city would have known better, we would have made an appeal. And I think if we'd have known how to make it, it would have gotten approved because I've got 2 square miles that does not count, but does count. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so if you want numbers, so there were 52 appeals filed on 47 different jurisdictions. And so 2 of them were granted at least a partial appeal. One of the reasons was due to the boundary issue that was not considered. And then the other one was granted due to flooding issues. And so the basis for appeals, there's a set of guidelines that SCAG is required to follow, but it does go through the RHNA subcommittee, CEHD, and regional council. council. But at the time, the three main factors were appeal were the application of the methodology. There's a list of planning factors in state law, so there's opportunities, constraints if they were not considered as part of the methodology and draft allocation, and then there's change of circumstances. And so in most cases, appeals were not granted because they could not meet those standards. But for this coming cycle, we will again have guidelines for how to appeal, and we'll try to answer any questions for those interested. In filing appeals, we can try to provide maybe office hours and other levels of support so that no one's wasting their time, at least. So if you're going to file an appeal, at least you have the best chance possible.
So follow-up question, once I made my claim all the way to the highest heavens, what they told me could happen is, well, we'll just give your overflow to your neighbor. Is that part of the appeals process where I'm now cursing my immediate neighbor with whatever extra I have?
So it depends on what it would be appealed. Like if it's a boundary issue and for some reason there's a calculation presented, there's enough evidence presented, the appeals board could hypothetically change RHNA, but I've never seen that happen, and I'm not sure I would encourage that. But I can't predict the future. I'm not going to make decisions on behalf of the RHNA subcommittee. But we are required by statute that any successful appeals have to be reallocated back to the region. And the reason is because the RHND at the beginning has to be the final RHNA allocation for the region at the end of the process. So it does have to be spread out throughout the region. So in a way, you are still giving it to your neighbor.
Thank you. And now I'll call on the Honorable Sheila Rossi.
Thank you. I have a question and a comment. My first question is related directly to the composition piece, and I understand the reason behind wanting it to be RC members. I would like to have a consideration for if there are excess spaces to open it up to committee members for this committee, because I think there are members who, quite frankly, are elected more recently. And I think by limiting it to RC only, you're excluding voices of people who have actually been elected in the last couple of years to represent their communities. And I think a lot of people who joined this committee were interested on RHNA specifically and understanding this piece. So my second point that I wanted to bring up is I appreciate the change from the last RHNA cycle and the move towards wanting to have more equitable composition and increasing representation for each of the counties. It does highlight, though, issue with LA County. And one of the concerns I've seen as I said, I'm a newer council member, and kind of observing the LA County scene is you have 88 cities in LA. LA is larger than most states. I think Los Angeles County is one of the largest economies in the world. And the way this is breaking down is we receive 4 committee members to represent a vast area. And one of the major challenges I saw in the RHNA cycle was a lack of contextualization. You're taking a cookie cutter approach, and it's hard for people in San Gabriel Valley to have an understanding of what's going on in San Fernando Valley necessarily, or Long Beach. And I think that, you also have a situation where smaller cities, I think, were disadvantaged in the last RHNA cycle because of the way the methodologies were used. And I'll give an example from my own city. When I looked at the RHNA methodology last time, one of the categories that was given weight was quality of school district. And the assumption that came with that quality of school district was that therefore you must live in an estate region with low density. And it just wasn't the case for us. So while it was true for our neighbors who were in the bottom 15%, they have this top school district and they're in the bottom 15% of density. We were in the top 15% of density and have also an equally good school district. So it's that kind of contextualization. It's the understanding of when 2 miles of a city aren't actually 2 miles of a city, or there's a mountain that got counted into the city, or there's, ocean issues or coastal, that is where I'm concerned about not having enough perspectives and voices. And that might be addressed with the SoCal Connect piece and having that piece, but it's, the sadness of being a part of LA County, yeah, which I'm realizing, I'm like, oh, I really wish we were not one part of this LA County, is that our voices, there's a giant elephant in the room, Los Angeles, City of Los Angeles, they get all of the funding, they get all of the attention, and the rest of the 88 cities struggle to be seen. So I guess, a joke, we've got LA 88 for 28 for LA Olympics. And I'm
So
like, it's,
Maya,
sorry,
did you want to
28 for 20.
respond to
Thank you. Go ahead.
Director Rossi's comments?
So at least the reasoning behind the recommendation for having membership be for CEHD members who are also RC members was because of the structure of the final decision-making on appeals, because it doesn't go back to RC. There's no more further recommendations. And so that was the reasoning behind the recommendation.
Thank you. And moving on to the Honorable Joe Baca, please.
Okay, well, thank you. It's in reference to the membership. Earlier, it was talked about losing population. Well, San Bernardino and Riverside County is actually gaining population because affordable housing is in that area, but not enough affordable housing is in our region. And so, when I look at, I understand what they're fighting for out here, but the wealth of the money always goes to LA area. And our communities, we need to get some of that money back into the Inland Empire. And that's what I'm fighting for in terms of getting equal share of the dollars that need to be distributed in our area. And that's why I'm concerned with the membership that we have out here. I don't know who from San Bernardino County has actually applied when you have 3 out here. So it would be nice if we knew, so we can coordinate to make sure that we have the membership that is there. And if not, I don't want to give it to the SCAG chairman to appoint someone from our, someone else from another region, and yet we're going to be left out and left up having a voice there. And I want to make sure that we have a voice from the Inland Empire for both San Bernardino and Riverside. Isn't that right, Andrew? That's right.
And Director Baca, I would say, given the qualifications of having to be on this committee and RC, you know who the handful of people are. I would start calling those people together and saying, let's strategize. I know that's what we're doing in Ventura County as well. So, and if everybody applies, then you might be in good shape, because you can start saying, wait, you withdraw, or anyway. So if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
All right. Andrew Maciel.
I was just agreeing with you. I didn't have any remarks. Okay.
Moving on then to Chelsea Byers, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. I had one question sort of related to a couple different comments in the room. When you show the differences in each cycle, the allocations, what will the committee be given to help analyze, data, storytelling, some of the decision-making implications that have come out of each of those cycles, so that we can understand what we're aiming towards and why RHNA is the tool to help plan for the sort of California we want to see now and not just react to?
So at the first RHNA subcommittee meeting, we'll bring any data that we have as part of the RHND process. Most likely we'll be meeting starting in August of this year in anticipation of then meeting in consultation with HCD and then getting the final determination. We will provide whatever HCD provides us as well, although I do have to say sometimes they don't publish their own findings. So what we have, we'll definitely share at the meeting and with the public.
All right, thank you. And the Honorable Frank Yokoyama.
Thank you, Chair Rhodes. So, yeah, I think it's pretty. This is important because we're going to get the RHND in 4 months, and I'm really wondering what that number is going to be. And just like we had to deal with the 1.3 million plus RHND back in 2020, this committee had to deal with difference of opinion. And when we were trying to determine the methodology that we were going to recommend to the regional council, which is what we're talking about here today, this committee didn't make a determination. We didn't make a recommendation. Back in 2020, there was a staff recommendation, and there was another recommendation that it was called the Cerritos methodology. And a group of cities were not fully satisfied with the staff recommendation for the SCAG methodology. And we had robust conversation in CEHD, and on the day that this committee met to make the recommendation to the regional council, and this committee voted in 2020 for the CEHD recommendation to the regional council, it was a tie vote. It was a tie vote. The same number of us voted for the staff recommendation as voted for the Cerritos recommendation. So we sent no recommendation to the regional council. And the regional council went with no recommendation from this committee. They went with the staff recommendation. And I want to make sure, I would like this committee to make sure that we work together. We are being given priority in this agenda report to be the RHNA subcommittee membership, and we should work together so we can this time give a strong recommendation from this committee as to what the methodology should be, instead of what happened in 2020 where we gave no recommendation because of the tie vote. So I just wanted to give that history of what happened in 2020, and I'm looking forward to CEHD and the RHNA subcommittee playing a strong role in advising the regional council on how to deal with the upcoming RHND and what the RHNA methodology should be for SCAG. That's my comment. Thank you.
And Director Yokoyama, thank you for that historical feedback, because that course knowledge is incredibly valuable. And I think that it was exactly that drove the decision making of moving from 6 to 17, that puts more voices in the room trying to hash it out. And there was concern, I know, internally of, oh my God, wrangling 17 people is hard. And the thought process is you end up with a better work product. You have to work harder, but you end up with a better work product. And I think that was part of that consideration. So thank you for your comments. Now call on Honorable Shauna Elias.
Thank you. I have a quick question about the makeup of the membership of the committee. I share the concerns brought up by Ms. Rossi. But, in looking at this, and, I'm in LA County as well, and I understand the desire not to overweight LA County in the makeup of this, but, with 3 times the population of the next largest county and only 1 additional member, can you kind of expand on how we came up with that approach on that number? Thank you.
Sure, and that's a great question. At some point, the balance of trying to get a quorum and enough members, and so once you start reaching over 17 members, it's not quite scientific, but we did look at then does that become half of CEHD? The larger it gets, the harder it is to just get the quorum, and so that's how the recommendation just became then 4 from LA County rather than something higher. It's just because the total will become at some point unmanageable in order to reach a quorum.
Quick follow-up. Are we confident that we're going to get adequate representation across the county? I mean, it's so diverse and there's a lot of different perspectives, I think, that should be heard, and to narrow that down to just 4 individuals.
We
have a little
certainly
bit of concern.
we certainly recommend that the SCAG president does take those into consideration when making appointments.
Thank you. I don't see any other cards in the room. Oh, absolutely. Honorable Jeff Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just
Would-
for those that are contemplating maybe applying, could you explain, I know Margaret kind of gave a little bit of her experience, but which is now making me rethink my submission, but can you explain like what the commitment is? Will it be kind of how the meetings will be? And I think also if you could explain what the appeal process is, because that in itself could be, you know, cities that are neighbors and our colleagues. So just if you could explain what we're applying for, and then just what the expectation is for a member.
Sure. And this is not intended to scare anyone off, but it is a very heavy commitment. We are starting 1 year earlier because statute required that HCD give us the number 1 year earlier. For the sixth cycle, for about maybe 6 to 7 months, we did meet at least once a month during the methodology process, and these were 2+ hour meetings each. So there is certainly a time commitment. For this cycle, because we are starting, we have the RHND, and then we will have the methodology rather than something concurrent. I anticipate even more meetings, so a longer stretch, and that there are more requirements this cycle for RHNA. So there'll also be a high learning curve for those who were not involved in prior cycles. So it is a lot to take on, and it is a big time commitment. I'm glad you brought that up, and hopefully this doesn't scare anyone away who has already signed up or is thinking about it.
And just a follow-up, right, Mr. Chairman, for those that may not be on regional council, would you recommend they go ahead and still apply, even though that it's a requirement, just in case there's not enough, or so you know their interest, or is it just if you're not a regional council, don't apply?
At this point, the criteria is CHD members that are regional council members, and we're asking regional council members that are interested to also submit their names should there not be sufficient CEHD RC members. That is the process.
Okay, I think that we can go online now, and I see the Honorable Frank Zerunian has his hand up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and greetings to all of you from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where I am on our campus teaching in our leadership program for law enforcement. But I wanted to participate because this is an important issue. I have been with several RHNA cycles, and I want to echo some of the sentiments of my friends and colleagues, Finley, Rossi, Okayama in particular, and tell you that in all honesty, it's all about the sauce making, and it's not about the ultimate numbers. My experience in the past has been that we had a very collaborative process, and we had more respect by Sacramento than we now have. This process became very political. The homelessness issue became political. One size fits all, less local control became political. And it's all about that. But I would like to say that we will have a new governor, we will have new agency heads, and we will have a number of new legislators. I think it's all about us building better relationships and trying to go back to that more collaborative process. And I really would like to say to our staff at SCAG, not to say things like the number is the number, and not to say things like we're baked into, et cetera, because it kind of defies the process and it dissuades those who wish to participate to make better policy. The number will be what it will be based on the data and based on the information that we get and the formulation that we agree on ultimately in a collaborative fashion. I would like us to focus more on the collaborative side so that we do take what my friend and colleague Rossi said, for example, about context. Context matters. Not every community is the same. that we do take into account, making sure that San Bernardino County, for example, gets a voice. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And I am hopeful and praying that with the new administration and new department heads, we can start maybe going back to that collaborative process. And that's what I would hope for. And I would recommend that all of us do what Frank Yokoyama also said, that focus on our job and do it the right way. But it'll dissuade people from doing it the right way if we bake in or say things like the number will not change. That is the wrong way to approach this. We need to definitely build relationships that the number is only the number that it needs to be, as opposed to an ideological number that was thrown our way, which is clearly the case. Those were my comments. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Zeranian, I see no other comments. Unless there is an offer to change the motion, I'd ask for a motion on this item.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we had Chelsea Byers as the mover and Margaret Finley as second. Can we call for the vote?
Yes. For action item number 4, Cindy Allen,
Aye.
Valerie Mesqua, Joe Baca,
Aye.
Debbie Baker,
Aye.
Chelsea Byers,
Aye.
Don Caskey, Tanya Doby,
Yes.
Deborah Dorsey Parada, Keith Ike, Sean Elias,
Aye.
Bob Engler,
Yes.
Rose Espinosa, Raymond Furman, Margaret Finley,
Yes.
Claudia Fermetta, Martin Fuentes,
Yes.
John Gabbard,
Yes.
Gary Gardner,
Aye.
Mike Goodsell,
Yes.
John Grass, Mark Henderson,
Yes.
Peggy Wong, Cecilia Huff,
Yes.
William Hussey,
Yes.
Linda Johnson,
Aye.
Matt Levere, Jed Liano,
Yes.
thank you, Jim Light,
Aye.
Annie Marshall, Betty Martinez Franco,
Yes.
Andrew Maciel,
Yes.
Joseph Morabito,
Yes.
thank you, Cynthia Moran,
Yes.
Joe Murphy, Rocky Road,
Yes.
Sheila Rossi,
Yes.
Sunny Santinez, David Shapiro,
Yes.
Becky Shevlin,
Yes.
Mary Solorio, Valerie Vanderveer,
Yes.
Mark Warrenick, Equinetta Warren,
Yes.
Jeff Wood,
Yes.
Judy Woozy,
Yes.
Tony Wu,
Yes.
Frank Yokoyama,
Yes.
and Frank Zeranian.
Yes.
And Debbie Parada, yes.
Thank you.
Just a point of order, did you record the vote for Mark Warren?
For this item?
Yes.
No.
We tried to see.
And I think Sunny Inez was trying to vote too.
I'm a yes. Sunny Santana say yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Chair, the action item 4 passes with 37 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I hope that we all, that those that get on the committee will, on the subcommittee, adhere to the advice of those who have come before in this process and work collaboratively to get this right. So the next item, item 5, is SB 79 approach and methodology. On October 10th, 2025, Governor Newsom signed Senate Bill 79, SB 79, which established new development and mapping requirements near transit-oriented development, or TOD stops and zones. The legislation also created a requirement that MPOs like SCAG map TOD stops and zones that will be used by affected jurisdictions to inform how they will implement SB 79. HCD has published the SB 79 advisory clarifications on definitions for metropolitan planning organizations, which SCAG utilized along with the statute to develop the SB 79 map. SCAG released its SB 79 approach and methodology on Friday, May 22nd. This action item will recommend to the Regional Council that body approves the SB 79 approach and methodology that will be presented to you today. I now call on Elizabeth Carvajal, SCAG's Deputy Director of Land Use, to provide a presentation on this topic.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Again, my name is Elizabeth Carvajal. I'm the Deputy Director of Land Use, and I will be providing you an overview on Senate Bill 79, SCAG's approach and methodology. So the action before you is that the CEHD recommend that the Regional Council approve the Senate Bill 79 approach and methodology substantially in the form presented, subject to revisions, technical corrections, or clarifications identified by staff during the review period, provided that any material changes to the approach and methodology are presented to the Regional Council for consideration. So in my presentation today, I'll provide you with a brief overview of Senate Bill 79. I'll highlight the roles and responsibilities of the various government agencies that have a role in the statute. The emphasis and focus of the presentation will be on our approach and methodology. We'll go on to stakeholder engagement and close up with next steps. So starting off with an overview, as noted by the chair, this was signed by the governor in October of 2025. The focus of SB 79 is increasing housing production near eligible TOD stops and zones. The statute establishes different TOD tiers, which are dependent on transit service and infrastructure and have development standards associated with them. Again, development standards, different implementation options, effective dates, and what we are focusing on today is a requirement that metropolitan planning organizations or MPOs like SCAG develop a map for their region. So looking at roles and responsibilities, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, is responsible for overseeing the statute. They are required to prepare guidance and provide standards and guidance to jurisdictions as they're evaluating how to implement the statute. MPOs like SCAG are responsible for developing the SB 79 TOD stops and zones map for their region, and jurisdictions that are affected by the statute are responsible to implement at the local level. So I will get into the approach and methodology, and I really want to emphasize that is the action before you, and that the approach and methodology is the technical basis for the map that we have produced. The approach and methodology document was very much constrained isn't the word, but we are working when we develop this within the legal bounds of the statute, the HCD clarifications, and then our technical implementation steps necessary to apply the statute. So again, this is the technical basis for the map, and we had to work within the bounds of statute and HCD clarifications. Some of the terms that we'll talk about today that are included in the methodology are urban transit county passenger rail station, TOD stops and tiers, commuter rail frequency, heavy and light rail transit, bus service, and pedestrian access point. I will go through and define some of these because they're important for context. And when there is an area where the HCD clarifications were broad, I will emphasize the SCAG approach so that you have that visibility. So starting off with urban transit county passenger rail station. So this is step one for SB 79 to determine whether it applies to you. Step one is you determine, am I an urban transit county? And the statute notes that an urban transit county is one with 15 passenger rail stations. The HCD clarifications clarified further that they have to be operational. So if you have 15 operational train stations, then you are an urban transit county. If you're not, you're not. So right now, Los Angeles County is the only urban transit county in the SCAG region. Orange County will become one when the OC streetcar opens and is in active operation. The next is TOD stop. So just because your county is an urban transit county doesn't mean that every single train station is affected by SB 79. We look at your different stops. And so TOD stops are major transit stops that are served by heavy rail, very high or high frequency commuter rail, light rail, or bus service that has a full-time dedicated lane and peak frequency of 15 minutes or less. When it comes to looking at stops that are affected by planned projects, the SCAG approach that we are moving forward with per the HCD clarifications is that we would only map planned projects that have full environmental clearance, meaning that the CEQA and if NEPA is applicable have been cleared. Those are the only planned projects we're mapping on the environmental side. And we're only mapping planned projects that have construction in the FTIP. So you either have to have full clearance or construction money in the FTIP for us to map the planned project at this time. I will note that there are projects that are not mapped at this time, but once they get the clearance or the construction money, they would be mapped at a later time. I also want to emphasize from the statute that projects not in the Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, after January 1st, 2026, will not be mapped unless they're tier 1, and I'll get into the tiers in a second, and that bus service is ineligible as a TOD stop for counties that become urban transit counties after July 1st of 2026. So getting into the tiers, there's two different TOD tiers. There's tier 1, which has the higher development intensity, and that is related to major transit stops that are served by heavy rail or very high frequency commuter rail with at least 72 daily trains across both directions. Tier 2 has a lower development intensity and is also a major transit stop that is served by light rail, high frequency commuter rail with at least 48 daily trains in both directions, or bus service that meets the public resources code identified here. Our map includes the TOD stops and has a 200-foot, quarter-mile, and half-mile buffer around each of those stops. And I want to flag as part of our presentation today that the parcel level eligibility will be determined by local jurisdictions. So moving on to bus service, eligible bus service under SB 79 must first qualify as a major transit stop. The eligible bus service must also include bus rapid transit or the intersection of 2 or more major bus routes with a frequency of service of 20 minutes or less during the morning and afternoon peak commute periods. Additionally, SB 79 has additional more stringent criteria for bus service, that is that it must have a full-time dedicated lane and provide service frequencies of 15 minutes or less during the morning and afternoon peak periods. So looking at dedicated lanes related to bus service, we consider dedicated lanes, for example, if there's a dedicated lane and a bike lane is allowed on it, or there's a right turn lane on it, we would still consider that a dedicated lane. The HCD clarifications noted that the required dedicated lane had to be adjacent to the stop. We consider adjacency to be in close proximity. So for example, if I have my stop here and the dedicated lane starts or stops across the intersection, we would consider that to be adjacent. But if the stop is here and the dedicated lane starts or stops a block away, that would not be adjacent, just as an example. Commuter rail frequency. So in our review of the statute and the HCD clarifications, we found that there is a bit of a difference on how commuter rail frequency is accounted for. In the statute, commuter rail frequency is a single line serving a station. So one line, you look at your stop, your station, and count how many trains a line has, and that's how you would determine the frequency. The HCD clarifications are more expansive and counting multiple service operators at a station. And so why this is important is that, as a reminder, when we're looking at commuter rail, the frequency of the trains determines whether you qualify as tier 1 or tier 2. So just to reiterate, in the statute, our interpretation is that you're looking at a line at a stop at a station and count to determine whether you qualify for tier 1 or tier 2. The HCD clarifications count multiple service operators at that station that are commuter rail to account for whether you have the frequency that would trigger tier 1 and tier 2. So given this difference that we have found, I want to flag that our map includes commuter rail stations that comply with the HCD clarifications, and we're also including, I don't know if you can see my mouse, this little text box on the upper right-hand corner on the applicable stations to flag for the jurisdictions that are impacted that there is this distinction so they can evaluate this. Ultimately, land use decisions are local determinations, and we want to make sure those jurisdictions are aware of this distinction. A few more things I want to highlight is that the frequency is calculated at the station level, and that per statute, we had to look back 3 years. So at any point in the last 3 years, if that station had the number of trains to trigger tier 1 or tier 2, that must be accounted for. This is more for information. There is no further clarification, but if you're wondering what are the rail categories in the SCAG region, for heavy rail, we have LA Metro's B and D lines. For light rail, we have LA Metro's A, C, E, and K lines. And for commuter rail, we have Aero, Metrolink, and Pacific Surfliner. Again, there's no further clarification. This is just for information. Pedestrian access point. So pedestrian access point is a primary location that a pedestrian would utilize to access transit station or a boarding platform. This is the basis for the point in which we then create the 200-foot, quarter-mile, and half-mile zone. We utilize two approaches for the pedestrian access point. The first is that we utilize the General Transit Feed Specification, or GTFS data that we get from transit operators. This is industry practice. This is coming from transit operators. And so we downloaded this data to map the pedestrian access points whenever that was available. However, in some situations, that is not available. So we worked with transit operators to collect shapefiles or plans and then identified a pedestrian access point of the center point of the platform at this time. However, when we do map updates, we would pick up the GTFS data when it becomes available at that time. So the map was made available on June 1st, Monday of this week. We are asking for corrections with documentation by June 12th. Those corrections would be reflected in the presentation and summary we provide to the regional council. I do have a couple of corrections that I want to make you aware of today, just to kind of walk you through those. I will warn you, this is very text heavy, but I have a visual example in the next slide that will help break this down further. And I will say that I apologize, this was not part of your packet, but the presentation will be sent to you today. So my apologies for that. So this is the first correction I want to flag for your awareness, and it's related to the General Transit Feed Specification, or GTFS data points. As I noted in the previous slide, or 2 slides ago, we use the GTFS points to map the pedestrian access points across the applicable stations in LA County. And GTFS includes 2 different categories of points. They include a 0, which represents a stop or a platform, and a 2, which represents an entrance and exit point. So we downloaded the 0s and the 2s, and we mapped them across applicable stations in LA County. A correction that we want to make is that when we have the 0, which is the platform and station, and the 2, representing entrance and exit, we want to drop the 0 because ultimately this is about the pedestrian access point, and the 2 is the entrance and exit point. However, in some situations, we only have the 0 available. We want to maintain that. Additionally, we have some situations where there are some projects under construction or operation, and we want to work with Metro to figure out if we can get an updated point on that as well. So let me give you a visual so you can see a little better what we're doing here. So this is an example of LA Metro D line. This is a heavy rail subway project. This is a Wilshire La Cienega station. So if you look on the upper left-hand corner of my slide, you see little 3 blue dots that have 2s. So those are, again, entrance and exit points. Then on the bottom right-hand corner-ish with the red circle, you see the 0. It's in the middle of Wilshire because this is a subway underground. So clearly the 0 is not a pedestrian access point. There's no way to access from there. The platform's underground. So per the correction we're suggesting, we would get rid of the 0s when we have the situation and just keep the 2. So hopefully this visual helps explain. And this would be done across the board when we have the 0 and the 2. The next correction I want to flag is related to cities that have a population less than 35,000 people. As I noted, we mapped all the eligible TOD stops in the region, the 200-foot, quarter-mile, half-mile radius. However, SB 79 has provisions that if a jurisdiction is under 35,000 people, the development standards beyond quarter mile don't apply. And so we think that it makes sense to clean that up so there isn't confusion. And so here's an example of the Metro A-Line Duarte City of Hope station. The population is under 25,000 people. The correction we would propose is to drop the half-mile radius to limit confusion. So in this image or aerial, the lavender, if you can see my mouse, is the half-mile. That would go away just to minimize confusion as part of a correction there. And I want to note there's 13 LA County jurisdictions this would apply to. So again, the map was released on Monday. We're asking for corrections by June 12th. With documentation, we will review and evaluate for eligibility per statute and HCD clarifications. The final revisions will be incorporated by July 1st. As appropriate, as these revisions trigger methodology updates, we would also do that as well, and then summarize all of this for the regional council at the July meeting. So moving on to map updates, there will be 2 triggers for when we update the map. The first is when a new county becomes an urban transit county. So when Orange County becomes an urban transit county, we would focus on working with them, do a lot of the engagement that we're doing with LA County to bring them up to speed, collect data, et cetera. and we'd focus on an update there. And then we are proposing annual updates to the map as well. We have not yet defined when they will be, but do want to do it consistently so there is some predictability on when that's happening. And when those updates happen, we would be updating the GTFS points. We would be picking up eligible transit projects that now have the environmental clearance, picking up eligible projects that now have construction money and the FTIP, and any other conditions that affect SB 79 eligibility. In terms of engagement, we've been working with transit operators on data collection, with LA County jurisdictions and operators on map corrections, and we will be doing similar engagement with Orange County as we approach them becoming an urban transit county. And again, this is based on OC Streetcar becoming operational. So in terms of next steps, we have an information session with LA County jurisdictions and transit operators on June 9th, again, to dig into the map. We will also have office hours available to them. June 12th is the deadline for map corrections with documentation. And then July 2nd is a regional council recommendation to approve the approach and methodology. So again, the action before you is a recommendation that the CEHD recommend that the regional council approve the Senate Bill 79 approach and methodology substantially in the form presented, subject to revisions, technical corrections, or clarifications identified by staff during the review period, provided that any material changes to the approach and methodology are presented to the regional council for consideration. That concludes my presentation. Happy to take your questions.
Deputy Director Carvajal, thank you so much for the presentation. That was a lot of words in a few minutes. Well done. We're now at the public comment section of this item. If you are now participating via Zoom or on phone, if you could do us a favor and use the raise hand function or press *9 if you're on phone, and if you're on phone, you're going to use *6 to unmute when the time comes. We'd like to know how many people are looking to speak. 4 plus 2. 4 plus 2. Okay, excellent. So because we're expecting several public comments on this item, the members of the public will have 2 minutes for verbal comments. And I would remind you, as we stated at the beginning of the meeting, if you are in agreement with a sentiment previously expressed by another commenter, we encourage you to simply state that you are in agreement to save our committee time for discussion. And with that, do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, I do see members of the public wishing to participate. Starting with those in the room, we have Jacob Pierce, if you could come to the podium.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Chair Rhodes, members of the committee. Jacob Pierce, I'm a policy associate for Abundant Housing LA. The issue before you is not really about housing, at least not as much as you might think. This is mostly about governance, avoiding legal risk, and providing certainty for the dozens of cities in our region with SB 79 implications. In your inboxes and in the public comment file, you'll see a letter from 13 organizations, including Abundant Housing LA, Streets for All, People for Housing Orange County, California Housing Defense Fund, Inner City Law Center, California YIMBY, and others, urging you to adopt SB 79 mapping and methodology that complies with and follows guidance from HCD. Specifically, we must stress 2 things. Number 1, SB 79 is applicable in TOD station areas upon their inclusion in a locally preferred alternative, LPA. You must not wait for the completion of the NEPA or CEQA documents. And also number 2, metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, like SCAG, must calculate train frequency based on service at station and not according to line. There is no reason to contradict HCD's guidance on these 2 issues. If the legislature intended SB 79 to operate in this way, it would have drafted them into law. But this is what's important. Although maps provided by MPOs like SCAG do have a rebuttable presumption of validity granted by SB 79, that does not make SCAG's proposed methodologies correct. Their ultimate rejection by the courts will only deepen confusion, leaving local governments in the lurch with flawed maps after SB 79's July 1st effective date. This will subject local governments to otherwise unnecessary costs, as well as sudden changes to local land use that could have otherwise been addressed. So please direct staff to address these 2 changes. I also want to highlight missing stations.
Thank you for your comment. Your time has expired. Next in the room, we have Thea Trindle.
Good morning. My name is Thea Trindle, City Planner with the City of Los Angeles' City Planning Department. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment today regarding SCAG's SB 79 approach and methodology and associated draft SB 79 map. On behalf of Los Angeles City Planning, I would like to make the CEHD Committee aware of a public comment letter submitted by Los Angeles City Planning yesterday evening pertaining to suggestions on potential revisions to the SB 79 mapping methodology that we believe could better support SCAG jurisdictions in their ability to implement SB 79 consistent with legislative intent and policy set forth in this transformative statute. Enclosed in Los Angeles City Planning's letter are detailed comments on topics including future transit-oriented development or TOD stops, a suggested mapping methodology for stops serving overlapping or intersecting transit lines, pedestrian access points, bus service, and mapping disclaimer language. Additionally, the comment letter includes technical feedback on 2 TOD stops, including a bus stop at Sepulveda Boulevard and Satakoy Street, as well as Olive Riverside Station. Thanks again for the opportunity to provide public comment. We look forward to continuing to collaborate on the implementation of this critical bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public in person today? Okay. Moving to those online, we have Jacob Wasserman.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks so much. My name is Jacob Wasserman. I'm speaking just in my personal capacity, but for reference, I am a transportation researcher by day, and I'm on the Santa Monica Planning Commission. I want to encourage you to put aside your thoughts on the merits of SB 79 and wear your local official hats, and know that if you adopt the methodology as proposed, your cities are going to get sued, or at least those with SB 79 projects, and it's going to create delays that are ultimately going to not change the results, but cost the city money and time and make members of the public frustrated that the guidance and maps that are put out are not matching what state law and state guidance requires. So the SB 79 says that there's a rebuttable presumption of validity for these maps, but it specifically says that the maps have to, sorry, let me just pull this up, be made in accordance with the department's guidance. That's the State Department of Housing and Community Development. And they say that any transit line, planned transit line that has a route selected, a locally preferred alternative, has to be counted. It does not have to go through the full environmental review yet, which can take years. I mean, the city of LA's map has the Sepulveda Transit Corridor, which is not done with environmental review, but every city map I've seen follows state law and state guidance, and SCAG doesn't. It's out of left field. And second, as other people brought up, HCD says you have to calculate service at a station level for commuter rail, not line by line. Like when you're a commuter, you see how many trains are coming. You don't think, oh, the Metrolink San Bernardino line comes this often. You just go where you want to go. And state law is clear. State guidance is clear. Just putting a disclaimer on the map doesn't solve the issue. Just follow state law. So I urge you to make a motion that the methodology be revised to accord exactly with HCD guidance. Very easy. That's it. Again, your cities are the ones getting sued. You will be on the hook. Thank you.
Next online, we have Andrew Solomon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Andrew Solomon. I'm also a planning commissioner for the city of West Hollywood, but obviously also speaking in my personal capacity. Ditto to a lot of the things that Jacob Wasserman just said, but I wanted to highlight the approach that was taken by another MPO, by the Sacramento COG. The Sacramento COG's SB 79 map includes 15 planned transit stations, they include stations that are on their proposed green line to the airport. Those stations do not have final environmental approval and are decades away from operation. Nevertheless, the Sacramento COG decided to follow the law and HCD guidance, and they implemented in their preliminary map reflecting the state law. SCAG is going the opposite approach with this methodology by requiring a completed CEQA or NEPA clearance It's imposing a restriction that does not appear in the statute and does not appear in HCD's guidance. The result is that the same state law could be implemented differently depending upon which MPO you happen to live in. Sacramento COG is mapping planned transit as the law requires. SCAG is attempting to narrow the law through administrative interpretation. I urge you to revise this methodology. Do not recommend this to the regional council. You've seen the organizations that are opposed to this. Those are the same organizations that got this law passed in the first place. I predict there will be many legal challenges to this and only create more confusion. Please adopt a methodology that aligns with state law. Thanks.
Thank you. Next online, we have Madi Manji.
Hello, my name is Matthew Mungie. I'm here with Inner City Law Center. We are a nonprofit law firm based in LA, and we serve folks who are homeless and with homelessness throughout LA County. First of all, I want to thank members of the SCAG staff who put in a lot of work to create this methodology. I really appreciate all of you. I want to also thank members of the committee for taking the time to seriously talk about this issue. I want to express that we as the Inner City Law Center are very concerned that the approach that staff has recommended opens up SCAG jurisdictions and SCAG itself to litigation. Specifically, we want to highlight two areas of concern in the methodology. Firstly, the staff choice to defer from HCD guidance to calculate train frequencies is concerning. In most cases, the AG and courts have taken the position that HCD guidance takes precedence over local interpretations. Secondly, the letter of the law in SB 79 is very clear. SB 79 will take effect on July 1st when a stop is included in LPA or an RTIP. SCAG's choice is in direct violation of state law. And regardless of the committee's choice today, committee's decision today, SB 79 will take effect on July 1st and stops not mapped by SCAG. It would be remarkably inadvisable for SCAG and for the jurisdictions involved to not map those stops. It is guaranteeing litigation by many parties. And unfortunately, this recommendation is in direct violation of the letter of the law as clearly written, as clearly discussed. We would highly advise this committee to change that recommendation to prevent an inevitable lawsuit. And folks are already preparing papers. The letter of the law is very clear. I really hope you guys do not open yourself up to litigation. We prefer that SCAG follows the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next online, we have a phone number ending in 3945. Just a reminder, press 6 to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Jesse Zwick. I am the Southern California Director of the Housing Action Coalition. I'm calling in today to echo some of the comments that were made previously about how SB 79 should be. It makes it very clear that it's applicable to all TOD station areas upon their inclusion in a locally preferred alternative. You can't add additional criteria that doesn't appear in the text of the statute or the official guidance from HCD. Similarly, NPOs like SCAG must calculate train frequency by service at a station, not according to line or agency. To elaborate a bit on why this matters, beyond the obvious prudence of following the law, the short answer is that it will cause chaos and lawsuits that will ultimately hurt the cities in question. To illustrate, many cities, as you well know, are currently in the middle of a process of passing ordinances to implement SB 79. If a stop they plan to incorporate is not included on the map, they can't use it as part of their overall approach in shifting the required density within or between stops, or excluding some stops entirely under various allowances within the statute. If a builder then comes along and challenges the map and wins, and trust me, they will win if this version is approved and that this version that's been proposed by staff goes forward, that builder will be able to propose a building at the maximum height and density allowed by the state law, because the city didn't get a chance to make it fit within that broader plan for accommodating growth as the law allows. So in short, if you get this wrong and exclude eligible stops, you're not helping cities, you're hurting them, subjecting them to uncertainty, lawsuits, and ultimately a loss of control over how they implement this law and what gets built in their city. So please, as was mentioned by previous callers, instruct staff to make the necessary revisions to ensure that SCAG's maps are in accordance with the statute and with HCD's guidance on these issues. Thank you.
Next online, we have Bill Taylor.
Hi there. My name is Billy Taylor, and I'm the co-chair of the Sunset chapter of Abundant Housing, and I'm also the chair of the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council's Housing Committee, though I'm speaking in my personal capacity today. I'm urging SCAG to immediately bring its SB 79 maps into strict alignment with HCD guidance. We must build housing near transit to solve our affordability crisis and to hit our climate goals. SCAG's current maps do the exact opposite by artificially shrinking these zones. Riders care about how often a train arrives at a platform and not who's running the car. Train frequency must be calculated at the station level, combining Metrolink and Amtrak service, just as HCD is directed. To put a local face on this, my local train stops that are eligible are Vermont Sunset and Glendale, and they're surrounded by a literal sea of surface parking. That could be housing. It's revealing that every single methodological change that SCAG is proposing is a restriction, not an expansion. When every deviation points toward blocking housing, it stops looking like oversight and starts looking like a pattern. If SCAG continues with this flawed recommendation, I hope they're sued, and I hope we lose. We desperately need more housing and better access to transit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next online, we have a phone number ending in 5103.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Victor Omolchenko, and I am speaking to you as a West Hollywood renter and a community advocate. And among the public comments that have been submitted to your agenda this morning, you'll see many letters from corporate-backed housing advocacy groups like Abundant Housing and several of the speakers that you've heard from earlier. And they're demanding that you force unbuilt future transit lines onto this map. They're bringing up these fears of lawsuits, as they always tend to do to try to scare you. I urge your committee to stand firm against that pressure and recommend full approval of the SCAG staff's methodology, the operating transit only methodology, to your larger regional council. And to put a local face on this, like Mr. Taylor mentioned, in West Hollywood, we're a microscopic city encompassing just 1.9 square miles. 1,216 acres of land. Under the text of SB 79, a single transit stop triggers a half-mile radius zone that encompasses 502 acres of land. If you cave in to the guidance and map our 3 unbuilt conditional K-line extension stops, the state's rigid formula will force 3 separate 502-acre circles onto our map, and because our municipal boundaries are so jagged, these massive circles bleed heavily into Los Angeles and Beverly Hills. And you know, folks, triggering automatic overrides decades before a subway is funded or built will not create equity. Everybody's talking about equity. Is this equitable? It will cause mass displacement of renters. In my city, founded on rent control, 80% of us are renters. That's a majority. This threat could cause mass displacement of renters. And this threat is amplified because our own city council majority is currently refusing to initiate a local alternative plan.
Next online, we have Thomas Irwin.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Thomas Irwin, and I'm calling in today to represent the Faith and Housing Coalition and our members across Southern California. We believe there's a moral imperative to addressing the housing crisis in Southern California. That housing crisis is keeping families from their dream of homeownership. It's burdening renters with costs they cannot afford, and it's pushing tens of thousands of our neighbors onto the street across all the counties that SCAG represents. I'll keep this brief by co-signing the comments shared earlier by Jacob Pierce and Jacob Wasserman. SB 79 is the law of the land. It's a law we as an organization fought for because many of us believe that this law can be a benefit to our cities and the cities you represent by addressing this broader housing crisis faced by our neighbors. SCAG's methodology and mapping undermines HCD's guidance for implementing this law in the March memo. Undermining SB 79 doesn't really serve anyone. It delays housing we need. It leads to pointless and costly litigation. And ultimately, it denies cities the clarity they need to shape SB 79 implementation in their city. So I stand alongside the other members of the SB 79 coalition and ask you to bring your maps into line with HCD guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next online, we have Victoria Gomez.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good morning. Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Victoria Gomez. I'm an organizer with the Housing Action Coalition. We support SCAG's goal of producing a clear and reliable SB 79 map. However, the current methodology proposed today contains two key errors that conflict with the statute and HCD's advisory. First, the methodology requires a full environmental clearance. SB 79 sets a lower bar than this, which is a selection of a preferred alternative. Requiring a completed EIR delays mapping by years, and that is contrary to what the legislature intended and what people need. Second, the methodology counts commuter rail frequency line by line, rather than aggregating all trains serving a station. HCD's guidance is explicit that aggregation is required. And what was proposed today, these maps exclude some of the region's busiest rail hubs, and that's the opposite of SB 79's intent. These aren't judgments that SCAG can legally make. They are departures from the statute and will invite litigation and undermine the map's reliability over time. I urge the committee to direct staff to correct both of these issues before recommending the methodology be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I do not see any other members of the public.
Thank you, and thank you for all the people who came or spoke online. We appreciate your comments and feedback and interpretations of how the bill is to be read. I'll now entertain comments from members of the CEHD, and we'll start in the room. And we'll go the opposite way around the room this time. The Honorable Frank Yokoyama, please. Oh, that's left over. Excellent. Chelsea Byers, please.
Thank you. I have some questions, if that's okay. First question, just based on some of the public comments that we received, if the text of the law defines planned stations as one that's selected as part of the locally preferred alternative, on what basis did we have to change the criteria to the completed environmental review?
So the statute notes that HCD is charged with preparing guidance that would help inform the map development. On environmentally cleared projects, the HCD guidance states selected preferred alternative route stops from an adopted CEQA NEPA document and locally a preferred alternative or other locally implemented document as determined by the MPO. So from our perspective, the HCD guidance allows us to focus on a fully cleared CEQA NEPA document. We are working within the HCD clarification from our interpretation.
And does it exclude, would it exclude the locally preferred alternatives under that? It doesn't read that it does according to some other agencies.
Sorry about that. It's an or, and we are making the staff recommendation that it should be fully CEQA and NEPA cleared document because there's greater certainty on where the station will be located. That is our recommendation, and that is why we're bringing this before the CEHD and the Regional Council for their consideration.
Thank you. I have one additional question and then a comment. If the guidance memo from HCD on March 20th states that the stations are calculated for eligibility by combining multiple stations, why would we prepare maps that would deviate from that guidance on the stations?
Thank you for that. Happy to clarify. Our map does account for stations that have multiple operators. So our map is developed in alignment with HCD clarifications. We have received some comments from stakeholders that there should be more stations that might qualify. We are verifying that, and if they do qualify, we would map them. But just to be really clear, our map complies with HCD clarifications. We are including the note to highlight the distinction that we see in the statute, but the map is mapped per HCD clarifications. We've heard there's more stations that might qualify. We are verifying that.
Thank you. I'll just say, West Hollywood was anticipating a decision on SB 79 at the same time that we were anticipating a decision on the K line. We looked to collaboration and future planning as our sort of higher value. We wanted to make sure that we could anticipate for the type of changes that would come in the best way possible. And I feel really that this decision and guidance is leaving our city more vulnerable to uncertainty and lack of predictability that we saw. We were one of the first cities to sign support for SB 79, anticipating that these two dual realities would come into our landscape and that we would have a choice of how we wanted to prepare as a 1.89 square mile city amongst this region. So for us, I'm concerned that the guidance and the recommendation today before us is leaving us with less certainty, less predictability, and greater vulnerability to the types of plans that we were trying to prepare for. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Tanya Doby, please.
Well, first of all, I want to smile at all of our SCAG staff because y'all take a lot. They got y'all posted and whip. So I appreciate you. I really do. It is a thankless job, so thank you. I recognize you are between a rock and a hard place, and I can say that as an elected official who gets stuck in some of those same spots. Now, I actually have a question, and it is if both Metrolink and Amtrak service are counted cumulatively at shared stops, is it likely that a number of those stops would be pushed into Tier 1 or Tier 2 classifications, given that Amtrak's inclusion in this framework appears to be a particularly ambiguous area? What is SCAG's official position on whether Amtrak service should be counted?
So the HCD clarifications think further clarify which Amtrak service qualifies. I'm going to ask Philip Lott to help expand on that.
So for the purposes of determining whether an urban transit county, whether a county is an urban transit county, the guidance states that we should not be counting Amtrak long distance services. So those are things that like Sunset Limited, which goes east across the country. So that's for the purposes of urban transit county. But for the calculation of whether a commuter rail station is high frequency or very high frequency, we would be considering under HCD's guidance the Amtrak Pacific Surfliner services, which run through our region.
Good. All right. The Honorable Sheila Rossi, please.
Thank you. I want to echo Tanya's comments. You guys have been put into an incredibly difficult position here because you were tasked with mapping this out with limited guidance. I think one of the biggest issues with SB 79 that I've had is a lack of clarity and a lack of analysis provided to legislators prior to the bill passing and provided to constituents as well. There are a lot of devils in the details on this piece. So I do think that clarity, and people talked about the letter of the law. I have personally watched legislative intent being defined post-legislative signing. I've heard conversations where I have been in the room with people who were working on the bill who said one thing to legislators and now are saying on video recorded that I have, and now they're saying that was never the legislative intent. So I think this discussion of legislative intent has been a challenge. What I have a problem with as a city is the lack of clear written guidance from HCD, who, while the law seems to try to put SCAG in the position of being the map makers and responsible, the reality is what's clearly being said over and over again, HCD is the one that's responsible. So what they need to do is go ahead, put it in writing right now, today, exactly all of their guidance, exactly what they just have determined the legislative intent is, so that we can have clarity as cities. I was the primary person who pushed for an alternative plan because I saw, well, one, we just spent $1 million on a plan because of HCD, and then turned around to have this bill and said we need contextualization for our communities. We do not have the clarity to be able to get an alternative plan to HCD by July 1st. We had to pull it from our agenda this last week because we have not received clarity on the rent stabilization ordinance, on historic registries, on the mapping. There's a big difference. What we were told last September and October about 1 point, a circle, to now an evolving, expanding oval has been a problem. I actually do agree with many of the public commenters in that at the very least, I think there should be a mapping, even if we don't actually say that if SCAG says this isn't what's in place now because of the CEQA rules, at the very least, cities should have an understanding, as should their legislators, of what is coming. And I think keeping this, because a lot of cities have no
Ms.
understanding.
Rossi,
So
can-
that is it. That is my, sorry, this is a big issue for our community.
I get
And I wanted to like make sure that these pieces are in. We need HCD to provide guidance, period.
Thank you. We have a couple more speakers. The Honorable Jim Light, please.
Thank you, Chair. To the extent that the HCD guidance allows us to exclude LPA selected sites, I support your recommendation. Just an example, in Redondo and Torrance border, we had a station that was per the LPA that's in a different location than what was approved by the Metro Board. And now we don't actually know the exact location. We know which corridor we're putting it on, but because we haven't done any environmental analysis, we don't know exactly where that stop's going to be. So we would have to keep redoing our maps just based on, a conjecture of where we're going to put it, not having gone through the final vote. So to the extent HCD guidance allows it, I support leaving out LPAs and using the higher standard. Thank you.
Thank you. And Martin Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You cited Duarte as an example of the population 35,000 or under. The city of Cudahy is 1.2 square miles, 25,000 residents. But we are strong advocates in supporting our COG in traveling to Sacramento, to Washington, D.C. to advocate for the funding of our Southeast Rail Line, which is we're going to benefit from 2 stops, in Southgate and in Huntington Park, but still we're going to benefit from it. The question is, as a city, right, like we would be exempt, but as a region, will we ever be considered as a region, like as the CELA region? Or will it always be kept as an individual city?
So thank you for the question. I want to clarify further, and please let me know if I'm misunderstanding. So when I noted that one of the corrections related to cities that have a population less than 35,000 people, we would not be removing the station. We would just be removing the half-mile buffer, because right now every stop has a 200-foot buffer, quarter-mile, and half-mile. So for those 13 cities that have less than 35,000 people, we would just drop the half-mile. The station stays the 200-foot, the quarter-mile. So I don't know if the question was an assumption that Cudahy would drop off. That is not the case. We would just drop the half-mile buffer. And I don't know if bringing up the slide would be helpful. Maybe I can do that. I don't know if AV, can you bring up my deck, please? Just to show the visual. And please let me know if I'm misunderstanding the question. Yeah. Okay, let me choose channel. Okay, I'll move the slides. Okay, here we go. So this is as an example, Duarte. You see the little black dots, those are the pedestrian access point. The blue circles represent 200-foot buffer. The purple represents the quarter-mile, and then the lavender, if you can see my mouse, you can't see my mouse, but the lavender is the outer ring. That ring would go away, but the rest of them would stay, because the statute states that if a city is less than 35,000 people, the development standards beyond the quarter-mile don't apply. So we don't want there to be confusion with buffers around a station where development doesn't apply. So just to reiterate, the only thing we'd be removing is the outer ring. The rest of it would stay. Hopefully, does that help clarify?
Yeah, I just want to advocate for all of the positives for Cudahy and none of the negatives.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more speakers in the room. And none online. Excellent. Thank you for the comments. Good, vigorous conversations. I didn't hear any alternate motions. So at this point, I would entertain a motion for this item.
Move approval, Finley.
Approval, Finley, and Who had second? Honorable Ms. Allen, second. And can we call for the vote?
Yes.
I would have offered an alternative motion based on the recommendations of the public comment and the concerns around some of the differences in methodology.
Motion, and then we have a alternate
If
motion.
now a substitute motion is more appropriate.
We have a motion and a substitute motion. Is there a second on the substitute motion? The substitute motion is to, I believe, revise based on the comments received. So that would be to do the stack that they're recommending and to map the projects that don't
The
have the full
alignments,
environment.
yeah. Remove basically the environmental threshold that SCAG chose.
So that's the substitute motion, if there's a second. Not seeing a second, so that substitute motion fails.
Okay, call for the vote.
Yes, this is for action item number 5. Cindy Allen.
Aye.
Valerie Mescla. Joe Baca.
Aye.
Debbie Baker.
Aye.
Kelsey Byers.
No.
Don Caskey. Tanya Doby.
Yes.
Deborah Dorst Parada.
No.
Keith Ike. Sean Elias.
Aye.
Bob Engler.
Yes.
Rose Espinosa. Wayman Furman. Margaret Finley.
Yes.
Claudia Fermetta. Martin Fuentes.
Yes.
John Gabbard.
Yes.
Gary Gardner.
Aye.
Mike Goodso.
Yes.
John Grass. Mark Henderson.
Yes.
Peggy Wong. Cecilia Hupp.
Yes.
William Hussey.
Yes.
Linda Johnson.
Yes.
Matt Levere. Jet Liano. Jim Light.
Aye.
Annie Marshall. Betty Martinez Franco.
Yes.
Andrew Maciel.
Yes.
Joseph Morabito.
Yes.
Cynthia Moran.
Yes.
Joe Murphy. Rocky Rhodes.
Yes.
Sheila Rossi.
No.
Sonny Santinez.
Yes.
David Shapiro.
Yes.
Becky Shevlin.
Yes.
Mary Solorio. Valerie Vanderveer.
Yes.
Mark Warwick.
Aye.
Equinetta Warren.
Aye.
Jeff Wood.
Yes.
Judy Woolsey.
Yes.
Tony Wu.
Yes.
Frank Yokoyama.
Yes.
And Frank Ziranyan.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair, the action item passes with 32 yes votes and 3 no votes and 0 abstentions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next on our agenda was to be an information item on Connect SoCal 2024 implementation strategies update. We're going to apologize to Leslie Caton, who came prepared to give us that report, but we are, due to the vigorous debate, short on time, and so we're going to
Where
move
is Eva?
on in the agenda.
There she is. There she
And-
is.
What did I miss? Okay. And so now we're moving on to the chair's report. As alluded to earlier this evening, there are 2 opportunities for members to increase their involvement at SCAG by serving on the RHNA subcommittee and the Connect SoCal 2050 subcommittee. Per the Regional Council action in May, the Connect SoCal 2050 subcommittee will include 2 members from each of the 3 policy committees with representation from across the region and may include up to 3 ex officio members to provide additional policy perspectives. If you are interested in applying to these committees, please contact Maggie Aguilar, the SCAG's clerk of the board, by 5 p.m. tomorrow, Friday, June 5th, 2026. SCAG President Ray Marquez will approve a roster for both subcommittees later this summer. And do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd like to let the committee and members of the public know that there's a public input notice for SCAG's federal certification review. The Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration will conduct the 2026 SCAG Federal Certification Review to evaluate the regional transportation planning process carried out by SCAG and its partners. Every 4 years, the FHWA and the FTA jointly complete a certification review, inviting the public to comment on SCAG's transportation planning process. Members of the public may provide the FHWA and the FTA with written comments by email or regular mail. More information and instructions to submit comments can be found on SCAG News. Thank you.
And thank you. Do we have any member announcements for the betterment of the body? No. Then our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, July 2nd, 2026, just before our 250th birthday, at 9:30 a.m. Thank you all for your participation, and this meeting is now adjourned. One down.